Welcome to Moonlight Madness, a podcast recorded entirely from my parents' basement because I am 19 years old and I have yet to move out for university. I'll be your host for this bountiful evening. Some may call me Moon Moon, while others may call me Light Wolf. I am known as the Moonlight Madman, and welcome to Moonlight Madness. As always, that was Trough the Day for our intro music. Now, time for a little bit of news in my situation. I turned 19 yesterday. Hooray, whoopee! And now, today, on this episode 2 of Moonlight Madness, we are going to be talking about Wicca and what it means to be a Gardnerian witch, along with various other themes of the occult, such as occult writers such as Eliphas Levi and Crowley, and his work on the Lemegeton. Also in the news, I will be uploading these to YouTube as well as SoundCloud. My YouTube channel, as Lightwolf Productions, has now hit 1K subscribers, so hopefully I can get this message out. Greetings everyone, this is Moonlight Madness, and I am here with my first guest on the podcast, Lilokin, otherwise known as Hellbound Heathen on YouTube. So, Lilokin, why don't you give a bit of an introduction to the people?
Sure. So I got into studying mythology when I was very young, around 13, when I was in what was I in elementary school at that time? I think it was junior high school. And I had always been one of those kids that were kind of weird, kept to themselves. I just moved to the Bay Area a few years ago from Southern California, and I just didn't really get along with a lot of how cliques are in high school.
Yeah.
And I just never really fit in, and so I kind of got into the punk crowd. And these were other people who were kind of like out on the edges, out on the fringe, and so I felt really comfortable with them. And over time in school, I never really studied in school. I got completely bored, and I would just leave. I don't know how I graduated high school. I spent like maybe 1/3 of my time in high school that I should have been. But anyhow, I would go to the library and just read books, and study mythology and history, and that really fascinated me. I loved that stuff. So I would just skip, math and Spanish, and go to the library and learn about history and mythology.
Yeah.
And eventually I started reading about Celtic mythology, and that really piqued my interest. I saw this word druid, and I was like, wow, what is this? And I looked into the history of them, and I found out there's just not, the druids were just wiped out pretty much from Europe.
Yeah.
When the Romans conquered Gaul, I don't know if they purposely tried to kill all the druids or suppress their religion or whatever. We don't have any records of it.
Yeah.
All third-hand information, Cicero, Strabo, Caesar, all this third-hand information. So I was really fascinated by the Druids, and I wanted to find out more about this quote-unquote Celtic priesthood, and what did they believe, and what was this, there was this image of them dunking this person into the Gundestrup cauldron. And, the cauldron was the symbol of transformation and rebirth. And I really liked that idea of, transforming yourself and becoming a better person. And, I think most of us want to change our life, improve it, make it better.
Yeah.
And so that got me interested in studying that. But unfortunately, there wasn't enough information really for me to kind of put together philosophy and ritual and stuff to celebrate and at the time to worship the old gods.
As in, like,
And so I got into studying. My first introduction to witchcraft was a friend of mine in San Francisco who loaned me a book by a couple of authors named Janet. Now I'm drawing a blank. Janet and Stuart Farah. I always mispronounce their last name. It's either Farah or Farah. I always mispronounce it. I'm an American, so we always mispronounce names. But I studied the book and I read it and I was like, oh wow, it really resonated with me, and that kind of got me onto my study. And as you study Gardnerian witchcraft and other forms of witchcraft, which I'm sure we'll probably get into later on,
yeah.
I wanted to find out, where did this come from? You know, I mean, did Gardner just make it all up? Did he just sit down one day with a blank piece of paper and just write out the entire Gardnerian ritual and philosophy? You know, I mean, I think a lot of people believe that. And when you study because there's published material and then there's unpublished material. There's material that is kind of like passed on from initiator to initiate, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a lot of stuff out there that's claimed to be Gardnerian out on the internet. So if you look at a lot of the stuff that's published out there, you can source that material. You can see where it comes from. And a lot of the quote-unquote Gardnerian material, you can't source it. I mean, maybe I'm just ignorant. Maybe I just haven't found it. But a lot of it is not. You can't really specifically see the source of where it came from. Some of it you can. So that's always fascinated me. But in that you find out other things about alchemy and hermetics.
Oh yeah.
And the occult and various grimoire books that have been out there and translated. And so that got my interest into studying the quote-unquote the occult in general. And so that's just kind of how it all started. And I was 13 years old back then, and now I'm 53, and it's worked for me. It really resonates with me. I've never studied, I've never left the path. I've never changed religions or anything, and I do consider my practice a religion. There are people out there who practice witchcraft and identify with the word witch, but they don't necessarily see it as a religion. They see it more as a craft, a practice, a hobby, if you will. Well, maybe hobby isn't a very nice word for it, but I mean, they consider it to be a craft. They consider it to be something that they do, but maybe it's not necessarily a religion for them.
Yeah. So
yeah.
See, I consider myself to be like a sort of equivalent to what you've sort of said. It's like, I'm a 19-year-old, right? And I started looking into all of this when I was like 17 years old. I just left the faith of Christianity behind, and I had friends who practiced Wicca, and they told me all about their faiths and stuff. I did not particularly practice the Gardnerian path or the Celtic path, but I sought out to follow the cousin to it, which was the Norse path, Like, I study runes, runecraft, all the Norse gods. That's the stuff that I feel a connection with.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And you can definitely see that there are similarities to a degree between the Norse path, as people call it, Asatru, very different. There's all different degrees of different paths in the Norse witchcraft community.
Mm-hmm.
and you can definitely see the connections to it, especially like perhaps not necessarily with the gods, but because Viking culture, or the Norse culture was spread throughout Europe because, well, of Vikings. So when the Norse came to Ireland or the British Isles to establish their control, they brought with them their own faith, their own community, and so that's the kind of stuff that I practice.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Yeah, and I think that there's, I really enjoy that. I think that everyone should find their own path.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with maybe adopting another path. Like maybe you grow up in a home where it's a Christian household or a Catholic
Yeah.
household, or maybe a non-secular household. I grew up in a pretty much non-secular, atheistic household.
Really?
Yeah, but I think people identify with words way too much than they should. That's one of the reasons why I kind of left some of the online pagan communities.
Oh yeah.
Because everyone gets so wrapped up in identity. Who are you? What do you do? What do you practice? And that's the reverse of how you should do it. You should first of all find what it is inside of you that you're looking for. And then once you know that, then find what resonates with you. If Gardnerian resonates with you, if Asatru resonates with you, maybe some form of polytheism resonates with you, maybe you resonate more with maybe adopting Hindu philosophy with Buddhism, and then incorporate it into your practice. I think that people should start from themselves and then find a label that seems to fit them, rather than it seems apparent to me that some people prefer to have the label first, and then and then they get frustrated because that particular label didn't fit them, and so then they think that it's the fault of the label. It's not the fault of the label. It's the fault of, it's not really, there's really no fault to it. It's just that you don't really identify with that. So you may identify with the word witch, but what you actually practice and what you actually do has absolutely nothing to do with a traditional European witchcraft.
Yeah.
I should also point out, as I'm sure you are aware of, there's many various different quote-unquote witchcraft practices throughout the entire world, but they don't have that same word. Like in Spain, and it's bruja. In African cultures, it's voodoo.
Yeah.
Or Santeria, and Santeria is from a different location, but all those various things, essentially, they translate into witchcraft. But if I was going to talk about somebody who's practicing a voodoo tradition or an Asatru tradition, I would say that particular tradition, and I wouldn't label that as witchcraft, European witchcraft. I would label it as witchcraft of their culture, which I think is important for us to make that distinction, and also hold that respect and understand that a lot of the practices, like Asatru is a very, very good example of that. It's not only a religious path for many people, but it's also a cultural identity. It's a cultural path, and they see it as part of their culture. That doesn't mean that other cultures can't participate in it, but it's just important to understand that. So.
Funny mentioning that. I actually do have a Danish friend who does consider Asatru to be part of their culture, and specifically one of the specific reasons as to why they told me why they were Asatru was because, well, for a while they were agnostic. They didn't like the idea of Christianity, and they grew up in that culture. They grew up where Asatru would be seen as being from, so they just decided, hey, of all things to practice, let me practice this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And speaking of voodoo and stuff, I also have I know not a lot about voodoo, but I do know a lot about another one of the African practices. It's seen as a faith to the Yoruba people of the faith of Orisha, which is they sort of believe like it's not necessarily polytheistic, but it's also not necessarily monotheistic. They do believe that the spirits you work with are, well, spirits, but they don't see them as deities, them as like, hey, that's my cousin. I'm working with my cousin here. And there are similarities between some of the Orisha practices to typical voodoo practices. Like in voodoo, there is the god Papa Legba, which is seen as, the trickster, the person who helps you on, like, I'm going to use terms that I understand as well. Papa Legba is attributed basically is in a similar nature to Loki, and in the Orisha faith, they also have a figure like Baba Legba, which is called Elegwa. So yeah, there's not necessarily, as you've said, there's cultural distinctions between what kind of witchcraft there is. It's not necessarily just defined as European witchcraft or African witchcraft and so on and so on. But like, the question is, what is exactly European witchcraft to you? If you were to just say a general practice of what it is.
Well, my theory is that, as the pre-Christian cultures were sort of maybe pushed out to the rural areas and out of the cities, and the Roman, or excuse me, the Christian faith was spreading, and it began to take over. I think that a lot of the practices, a lot of the beliefs and the practices and the beliefs, I believe, got pushed underground and forced into mythology and folklore, and I think that that's where a lot of us draw from today, draw our practice and look for lack of a better term, guidance. There's a lot of folklore information, especially from Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, even Brittany, France, Germany, all the quote unquote European cultures where I'll get to that, but that folklore and those traditions, they survived, and then they got passed on, and elements of it kind of got forgotten and lost, and but I think that even in the 1800s in Europe, in England, well, in France too, there were many people who were kind of reviving the old, especially the Greek gods and Roman gods, kind of like looking at them again, and kind of like what I would call like a pagan revival. And that sort of, it grew a little bit more into the 19th century and then into the 20th century, and I think in the 60s and in the 70s it just blew up, and it really spread. But when I think about European witchcraft, and the reason why I make that distinction is because I would talk with other people online, and they would talk about witchcraft, and I would talk about witchcraft, but they were actually talking about a different form, like I was mentioning earlier. They were talking about voodoo, or they were talking about another practice, but they were calling it witchcraft. So I was getting confused. I was like, "You're actually talking about voodoo or voodoo. You're not talking about witchcraft." Oh no, it's the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. There's European witchcraft, and there's that practice which belongs to that culture. That is called voodoo, or voodoo, and that's their culture. That's their practice. So when I'm talking about witchcraft myself, I'm usually, unless I specifically say otherwise, I'm talking about European witchcraft, and I think that the term witchcraft really kind of blew out of the um, maybe 13th century, 14th century. Um, but I think a lot of the folklore and the old gods and maybe those pagan practices, I don't know. I don't know if they survived to this day. Like, there's a direct lineage of some kind of a witch cult that goes all the way back to, pre-Christian times. I highly doubt that. I mean, I'm 99.99% sure that's not the case.
Yeah.
I think that most people who claim to have a quote-unquote family tradition or a family lineage, it only goes back maybe one or two generations, as far back as it goes, if anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, they kind of like get this romantic idea, they buy a skull and black altar and,
The stereotypical witch gear.
Huh?
The stereotypical witch gear, so to speak.
Right, exactly, that dark aesthetic. And, it's kind of fun. I think when you're a kid, like when I was younger, yeah, that's fun. You kind of shock people, and, you're edgy, and you're willing to look at the darker aspects of humanity and all this stuff. And now, I'm 53 years old now. I look back at it. It's just funny to me. If you are practicing something, hopefully it's feeding you somehow.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not just doing this for the fuck of it. Like you're
Exactly.
bored one day, so you do some kind of a ritual for yourself. It's like, is that what you want out of your practice, or you take it serious? Do you actually? Is there a point to it? I mean, do you have what other occultists call a great work? And what that great work means is that you are spending time and energy and doing ritual and everything to improve yourself and your life, to gain greater understanding and knowledge. And as some occultists believe, and myself, I kind of on the fence of it, but some people believe that you can separate your soul or your astral body from your physical body, which they believe that happens to you after death, and that you can then sort of quote unquote escape that cycle of rebirth,
Yeah.
and be able to be reincarnated with your memories of your past lives intact. Obviously not everybody who's an occultist or a witch subscribes to this or ascribes to this theory, but there are some that do.
Isn't it like, didn't correct me if I'm wrong on this. Didn't Gerald Gardner himself even write down the witches are firm believers in reincarnation, and they say that once a witch, always a witch.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. He did write that down. I don't know exactly where or which book it was, but yeah, I am familiar with that line. And yeah, and I think that a lot of witches, myself, I believe in reincarnation. I don't know how much of it, like I don't have any memories of past lives that I can verify. I don't have any way to I don't have any way to verify them, so it's a very subjective thing to me. But I don't know. It seems like a strong possibility.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of believe that when I die, I think that's pretty much about it. But I don't know for sure. Other people, they have different theories, and I think that's and until we have some way of actually verifying any. They're all theories.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think anyone can actually verify until they actually die, but when you die, that's it. You can't verify.
Well, yeah, exactly. What happens to you after you die? Nobody really knows. Most people believe that you die, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Maybe the case.
Some people might believe, going back to the whole acid true point, some people believe that they'll go to Valhalla when they die, but there's a whole world of different mythologies, even in the Norse mythology itself. Not everyone goes not everyone when they die, goes to the halls of Valhalla. Odin has a chosen slain. Half of the chosen slain go to the halls of Valhalla, whereas the other half go to Freya's area. Forgot what I forgot what it's called, but it's like this giant field they go
the
to.
Elysium Fields, or is that?
Yeah, it's similar to the Elysian Fields, but that's a Greco-Roman here, but similar.
Yeah. Yeah, it's escaping me. I mean, it's obviously whatever happens, I believe happens for everybody. I don't think it's, I don't think it's like culture specific. Like, I don't think that if you die and you're a Christian, you're going to go to either hell or heaven. And if you die when you're an Nosferatu, that you either go to Valhalla or that other place. I think it's universal for everyone, but just human beings, depending upon which culture you grew up in, which mythology you grew up with, your culture has, that's their belief about what happens after you die.
Yeah.
But I think we're still very ignorant to a lot of those things. I think that anybody who sits there and tells you exactly what happens after you die, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Oh, yeah. Excuse me.
Oh no, it's fine. You can swear if you want.
Okay. Sorry, I throw in F-bombs every so often.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm from Northern Ireland. Everyone here swears after every sentence.
Oh, okay.
I do agree with that point. Like, everyone like there are people out there who go, I know what happens after death, or people who you have people who say they've had near-death experiences and that they've seen like this white tunnel and everything, and then they start preaching about how this doesn't have to just be like in the Christian sense. It could be like a pagan and whatnot. They start preaching about how I've seen this great tunnel of light and how everything makes sense to me now after I've had this near-death experience. But in reality, it's called a near-death experience for a reason. You didn't actually die, so you don't necessarily know what's really in the great beyond out there. No one does.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, so it's I don't mind referring to my beliefs and my theories and my ideas as subjective. If somebody challenges them or anything, I don't feel personally attacked. It's just what I believe and what I've come to an opinion about. And I think we all need to formulate our own opinions about, subjective things such as that. I don't know. I don't like herd mentality. I'm very opposed to that.
Yeah,
and it
same.
seems like the culture today, especially online, is that everybody has to get into their group and wear a certain label.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it is just the most annoying thing for me to encounter. It's like, why the fuck are you why are you identifying with this group when if you sat down with somebody from the opposing camp to your opinion, if you two sat down and talked about stuff, you would probably find out that you have more in common with each other than you don't have in common with another person.
Yeah.
It's like focusing on the differences rather than focusing on the similarities. And that's what I try, and I'm going to put try in all caps underlined here, but I try to find that common ground with other people. Christians, I've found it very difficult to engage with them and talk and get into a really serious dialogue about what pagans and what witches believe and what they believe, because, and this is not all Christians, hashtag not all, but a good portion of the ones that I encounter online, they're very, first of all, they don't trust me because I'm Hellbound Heathen and I have a devil icon. But they also there's some kind of a barrier there that I'm consciously aware of, and it seems like it's on their end that they won't open up. They won't engage in dialogue. They're very reserved, and they don't. It seems like they're not open to it because they think that, I don't know, like I'm trying to infiltrate them or trick them or manipulate them or do something like that. And no, I just want to like talk to you and find out why you believe that witches run around sacrificing children and drinking their blood for adrenochrome. That's what I want to know. Like, why don't you think that way about, like Buddhists or Rastafarian, or, you know what I mean? All the other 4,000, what is it, 4,199
different religions out there. Yeah. Bring it up on that point. I think like I've had experiences like that, especially since like I go to a school which focuses on the idea of being integrated. People from all different faiths are able to come to school here, and if you know a bit about Irish history, then you'll recall something that happens up in Northern Ireland known as the Troubles, where it was just Catholics versus Protestants, and they just kept attacking each other. My school always prided itself on being known as the first integrated school of Northern Ireland. And so, even when I go to school, especially last year, like I was in a group of friends, and they knew me as a huge Christian because that's who I was back in the day. But then, as I was opening up online, talking to different people about different philosophies, because I was one of those people that was open, as you said, like you find it hard to find Christians that can be open about, saying, okay, I want to learn about your beliefs and stuff like that. So when I told them that I had left the faith and I had, chosen a different path, and told them that I had been part of, Wicca or Asatru, whatever it was at the time, because I needed to get a label on myself. Because that's what teenagers do at times. They need to try and find some kind of label to put themselves onto. And so, as I was doing that, I started getting these people who, they said they weren't Christians, but that they came from a Christian background. I started getting these people saying, "You're in a cult. You're in a cult. Leave that faith now. Leave it." And then, eventually, as I started talking to them more and more, and they realized how fucking pissed off I was getting at them for, not criticizing me in a controlled area, in a controlled situation where they could actually say, well, why do you believe that? Why do you do that? Then, like, after they found out how angry I was getting at them for being, intolerant, so to speak, a couple months later, they ended up coming back to me saying and apologizing and like desperately wanting me to be friends with them again. As I like to let bygones be bygones, so I decided to do that. But at the same time, I had just started to close myself off now because they were in my eyes attacking me for my beliefs. And it is hard to find people out there like that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it is. I think it's. I think it is difficult to just sit there and listen to someone else's beliefs without having this inner dialogue in your head, challenging them and then wanting to challenge them. But I find it fascinating to find out what other people believe. One other thing that you mentioned that kind of struck a chord in me is that was that kind of wanting to fit in and wanting to be with a group and wanting to have a label. And it's really funny. It's like I see, and I don't mean to pick on Christianity. It's just that we live in a Western culture, and it's the dominant religion.
Yeah.
So I'm not just picking on Christianity. It's just the one that I have the most interaction with on a daily basis.
I mean, same.
But, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because you live in Northern Ireland, you're in the Western culture too. But it's like Christians they'll proselytize on YouTube, in comment sections.
Yeah.
or in tweets or out in the street. They're always trying to get somebody to, you
I've
know,
I've been
open up
guilty
and
of
want
that.
Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to go online and find like a local coven in your area, it's going to be difficult. And when you do, like you talk to them, they're going to be judging you and looking at you like, okay, is this somebody I want to circle with? And it's like the complete opposite of Christianity. It's like,
Yeah.
Christianity, they want to get as many people as they can into their flock, and specifically, let's say Gardnerian witches, they're like, well, I don't know. Are you sure you want to join our coven? Are you sure you want to study? Why don't we do this? Why don't you take a whole year and a day, study about Gardnerian witchcraft, and then if you're interested in it, then maybe we'll let you into our group, which is, usually how it happens with people. So I always find it really funny. It's like Christianity will accept anybody, and
Yeah.
witchcraft and paganism, we're like, I don't know. Are you sure? Do you really want to join us?
There are people out there who consider themselves to be, well, Christian witches, as much of an oxymoron as that is.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a great 401k plan. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And speaking of covens, you have your own coven, right? Coven Skithax, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Let me give you some background, especially for you and your audience.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I've had that website up for a long time. I think I started in 2004,
Wow.
2006. Anyhow, I've had it for a very long time. So when I was in 1988, well, actually 1987, a group that, remember I said that there was that book that I had gotten from a friend of mine in San Francisco. She was very much into Alexandrian witchcraft, which is
really?
Gardnerian witchcraft. I mean, maybe I should I don't know how long this program's supposed to be, an hour?
It can be an hour or longer. It all depends on how this goes.
Oh, okay, because I don't know how much history I should get into. But anyhow, Alexandrian witchcraft stems off of Gardnerian witchcraft. Alex Sanders was a initiate of someone who studied under Gerald Gardner. And I might have that wrong. I think I got that right. But so anyhow, so Alexandrian witchcraft is similar to Gardnerian witchcraft. So she studied Alexandrian witchcraft, and I was under the impression she was initiated. I don't know if she was. To this day, I don't know if she was. So she and her and her boyfriend, myself, and a couple of other people, we started a coven. We formed our own coven. And that group eventually kind of dissolved. There was some problems that happened in that group. They broke up. The girl and the guy, they broke up. And it kind of dissolved from that point. So that was a group that was the online coven that I sort of continued on to sort of. I was going to try to have an online coven and create this group, but it never really grew out of that. But I kept the website there. A lot of the material I put up on that website for anybody to access. But that was my quote unquote coven, that online group. But it really doesn't do anything. It's just it's pretty much defunct now. Later on, just a relatively short period of time, I was initiated as a Gardnerian witch officially. So So yeah, like you had mentioned, once you're initiated as a Gardnerian, then you're you're always Gardnerian. The same thing with Alexandrian witchcraft is that once you're initiated as an Alexandrian, you're always an Alexandrian. But as it stands today, I can claim myself as a Gardnerian witch, but as an Alexandrian, that's probably not valid.
Yeah.
And validity and all this stuff, that really only matters when you identify with a specific tradition like Gardnerian or Alexandrian. And even those are umbrella terms for then various lineages that come off of those various groups. So, for example, there's Gardnerian covens in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
There's also Alexandrian covens in Northern Ireland. I know people who are in covens in Northern Ireland.
It's very hard to find those kinds of people, considering, like, as we mentioned earlier, live in a Western culture where majority people are Christians.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard, like, specifically for someone like myself, it's very hard for me to go out there in Northern Ireland to go out and find people who, are part of covens or, practice the craft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine that. And also, there used to be this website called Witchbox, and they're no longer going to maintain that website. And that was a way for people who were pagans or asatru or heathens or witches or whatever, druids, to all kind of come together and connect with one another throughout the entire world. Like if you wanted to find a Gardnerian witch in South America, you could go to Witchbox and you could find one.
Interesting.
There's Gardnerians all over the world, but if you wanted to find a coven, sometimes it can be very difficult, and you really have to kind of hang out with people who are maybe doing Renaissance fairs or crystal fairs or tarot fairs or pagan gatherings and stuff like that. You have to go to those and you have to talk with people and you have to kind of connect one-on-one like we used to do before the internet. That's just how people are going to have to connect. But hopefully one of the frustrations that I encounter with Gardnerian witchcraft in the 21st century is that they're still running along the model of the 60s and the 70s, and the world is changing. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm hopeful that they will maybe adapt and find ways to get people who don't know anything about Gardnerian witchcraft, a way for them to sort of put their foot into that door and enter this community and find out if it's for them or not. Sometimes it can be very difficult. Like, let's say you do identify with Gardnerian witchcraft, but you're not initiated and you want to find somebody. And you've read the books, and you've read the history, and you've done this research, and you're really interested in it, but you can't become a Gardnerian unless you're initiated. That's kind of how it is. So you may have this desire, but you don't have any way to actually connect with somebody who may introduce you into a group or into a coven situation. And I think that's going to be the barrier that generations after mine are going to have to figure out how to overcome that obstacle and how to engage people and introduce it to them so that they can find out if it's for them. Like, if you study Gardnerian witchcraft and you're like, you know what, this is not for me, that's fine. Nobody has a problem with that. We're not going to sit there and say, no, I'm sorry, but you have to stay here. You have to be with us. And it doesn't happen that way. People come and go from various pagan groups all the time. Sometimes maybe you find a group that maybe it took you years and years to finally find a group, and then you get into this group and you find out it's toxic. That happens a lot. People get into power plays, conflicts, interpersonal things happen, relationships break up. All these various things can happen, and then you find yourself like out of a covenant, and you're back out on the street, sort of say, and you have to go out and look for another group.
Yeah. So is there, like, you say you have to be initiated into being labeled as a Gardnerian witch?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular reason as to why you'd have to be initiated into it, or is it just like a tradition, like a tradition where you have to be initiated into it so you can become an official, recognized Gardnerian witch, as like in terms of like the Western culture, because majority stuff, like how Catholicism says you have to get initiated into the Catholic Church and therefore you become a Catholic. Is it similar to that in a way, or is it like very different?
I don't know. I've never gone through Catholic communion or initiated into Catholicism, so I don't know what that is.
Well, neither have I.
Yeah. I know for myself, that's what they say. Like you can't be a witch on your own. You have to sort of be initiated into the coven, into the group. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have your own practice and your own beliefs and your own, path that you study. Again, going back to your personal path and your personal development and your personal philosophies about life, death, and everything. A lot of my personal beliefs and opinions align with Gardnerian witchcraft, and so that's why I identify it with it as the path that I follow.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do have to be initiated into a quote unquote proper Gardnerian group. That's kind of how it goes. And then of course, you get the people who kind of like, like they're in the back and they'll raise their hand, like Dorian Valiente, and it's like, excuse me, but who initiated the first witch?
That's a good point.
Right, exactly. And then, that's the question. And so it kind of like that kind of calls that into question.
Yeah.
But for myself, when I went through initiation, it wasn't the having the label afterwards, or it wasn't the what am I trying to say?
License to practice witchcraft.
Huh?
A license to practice witchcraft, essentially.
You got a license to practice that witchcraft. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that the process of initiation is what I found beneficial. It was that kind of coming into a group, being welcomed into it. There's things that you will hear people whenever they talk about Gardnerian witchcraft. They'll talk about a fertility cult, and then they'll talk about a mystery cult. Both of these things stem from pre-Christian folklore, pre-Christian mythology. This idea that the land, the fertility of the land was kind of wrapped up in the fertility of the culture. If there was a king without a blemish, or there was an understanding, there was some sort of a connection between the land and the people. I don't know how else to describe that, but so there was this belief that if you had fertility rites, that would help to bring fertile crops. Or if you went out into your field and you jumped on a broom as high as you could, those crops would grow as high as that. And so there's the concept of fertility that is wrapped up in the rituals that are performed in, specifically, let's just focus on Gardnerian witchcraft. And the mystery cult aspect of it is what happens during the various initiations that you go through. Also, it's part of just the interaction that you have before a circle, and a circle is what we would call like the church, or where you would go to worship, and then afterwards and during. And that mystery part of it is stuff that you kind of learn over time, or things that you begin to have clarity on and begin to sort of understand. And it can get rather esoteric. But so that is what initiation is. Initiation is bringing you into that coven and into that culture and into that quote unquote mystery cult, and into that fertility rituals and fertility cult. I don't know if I really described that very well.
Oh no, I think that's a very, very interesting way of putting it. Like, I had never actually heard of it like that. Like, well, I understand like Wicca and my version of the faith, of the practices and so on, because also true and stuff. There are similarities to that in accordance to like Norse myths as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Norse pantheon consists of the Aesir and the Vanir, and multiple other ones like the giants known as the Jotuns and so on. And the point is, the Aesir are seen as not just the war gods, but the gods of like the gods who know how to build things, the gods who know how to keep things together. Whereas the Vanir are the ones that are old, wise, they've been around for a very long time, and they too are like gods of fertility. So people will practice in relation to things like fertility, for instance. In fact, there's actually some things in relation to that in some in Scandinavian folklore, for instance. There's flowers, and I think might be wheat. I might be getting that wrong, but there's things called there's a flower known as Freya's tears, which are representative of like the goddess Freya. She's seen as a goddess of fertility, as is her brother, and they just try to help keep the crops fertile and so on. So it's interesting to compare the two together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that one of the things that talking again about the mystery cult aspect of it, you as you kind of study and you look at a lot of the symbolism and you begin to see a lot of the I guess the best way to describe it is symbolism in occultism. You begin to see how things represent aspects of humanity, and that is how I've evolved in my concept of deity to today. I don't look at deities as actual beings that live outside of myself. I see them as aspects of myself and also aspects of humanity. So, for example, I can see aspects of deity in other people. I can see aspects of deity in a group mind or a group culture. And it gives you a different insight into not only yourself on the microcosmic level, but you also can look at a greater society and a greater culture and see how they act and what they do to certain situations, or how they view themselves, or you can see that on a macro cosmic level.
Yeah.
So, you can see once, my personal opinion is that once you dive deep into yourself and really understand yourself, and, you kind of like you explore those nooks and crevices of yourself that most people kind of shy away from. When you have a better understanding of yourself, you then begin to have a better understanding of the group culture, the group mind, the group emotion, and it gives you that insight. And I think that that's something that it takes a while to understand, at least from a cult an occult perspective. And so that's kind of like how I view gods. When people talk about Loki, I see that mischievous kind of aspect within myself. That's how I perceive it, Or I may see somebody else acting in a way that I would associate with the Loki energy,
Yeah. In some ways, that kind of reminds me of, like, in terms of the occultism and occult literature, we see, like, a very common practice I find for people who call themselves, of the left-hand path, or call themselves dark/black magicians, or, dark witches and whatnot. Very common thing I see them practicing is demon summoning. And one of the things I remember, specifically Goetia, and one of the things I know about Goetia in terms of, I think because Crowley had his own version of it. Like I think he translated it in real, well, not exactly translated it, like, because there could be multiple people who have translated it, but he made his own. Oh, did?
Sorry to interrupt, but no, he didn't translate it. Actually,
all right.
S.L. McGregor Mabbitt.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he translated. Go ahead.
And so, this is like Crowley had a system where he said these demons that we are summoning are actually representations of ourselves. It's completely psychological.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, like, I kind of had to say I do agree with that. I do believe that we have these representations inside of us that we just give a label. Like, if we don't like something about ourselves, we give it a physical label of saying, this is a demon, I have been influenced by this person, when in reality you're just being influenced by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I whenever I see somebody, and if anybody identifies as themselves being on the left-hand path, this isn't a jab at you, but I do find I find that a lot of the people that I see online, maybe who just started a YouTube channel and they're very much into identifying with dark witchcraft, dark aspects of it, I see myself in that, and I see where they're at, because everybody is at a different level. We're all at different levels in everything, but especially in witchcraft and the occult, some people are at a beginner, and I don't want to say beginner level, but I mean they're beginning to open that door. They're beginning to have an insight and a better understanding, and they're beginning this journey for themselves. And it's up to them for however long they want to traverse it. If they want to stop traversing tomorrow, that's up to them. But most people, when they start out on this path, they begin to kind of project this aspect of their personality. And I find it kind of funny because my perception of the occult is very much balance.
Yeah.
Very, very important for me to have balance. A light is only as bright as it is dark.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to understand. Like they always say, like, comedians, the comedians who are the funniest usually have the darkest past, or have suffered pain in the past. This is what drives them to find humor, to find comedy, to find beauty in life, is because they have suffered, because they have gone through hell and they've survived. And what this does is it gives them a new love and respect and understanding of life and a beauty to it. And it's the same way. If you're only seeing dark aspects of yourself and you're only focusing on that, you're not seeing the other end of that spectrum. You know, there is incredible beauty and intelligence and compassion that human beings are capable of. They're also capable of horrendous and horrible acts. And you have to understand this, and you have to understand that within yourself. Because you can easily become what you hate if you don't see that aspect within yourself. It's, you know, you can suppress it, and you can. I mean, I see that today in our cancel culture.
Oh yeah.
I see that today online. I see this want and this hatred and this destruction of, yes, negative aspects of, or what we associate to be negative aspects of humanity. But they're so focused on that they don't understand that what they're doing is they're becoming what they hate. And specifically what I'm talking about is you know, like I don't mean to get political on your channel. If I do, tell me to shut up. But, you know, people who are upset about, you know, like Nazis and white supremacists online. So what their goal is to essentially kill them, you know, wipe them out. You know, they want to erase them from the internet. They want to prevent them from assembling. They want to do everything they possibly can to deplatform these people. And what it is they're becoming that hatred. They're becoming, instead of hating somebody for being Jewish, you know, as an example, they're hating people for being, you know,
hateful of
right, for being hateful. And so what it is you're not eliminating hatred from yourself and the culture. You're just changing it. That's all you're doing. You're just flipping one switch to the other.
Yep.
So you're not actually addressing the hatred and why these people hate other people. There's a what was his name? There was a man who actually went out. He was a black man from the South who went out and talked with somebody who was a KKK member.
Yeah, I know this story.
Are you aware of that person? You know that his name?
I can't remember his name, but I am aware of who you are talking about.
Okay, good. So you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So what he did was he didn't just like, oh, I don't want to talk to these people, shut the door, and just like, oh, they're fucking hateful and bigots, and I don't want to talk to them ever again. And what he actually did was he actually went out and talked with them. And he built up a rapport with them so that they began to look at him as another human being, not as, you know,
evil incarnate.
Their focus of hatred. And this one particular man, and again, I'm going by this person's story, but I don't have any reason to believe it's not, that it's not, I don't have any reason to believe it's fake.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so he went in and he talked with this person, and eventually the guy gave up his robe, and he said, you know what, I can't be in the Ku Klux Klan anymore. I just can't. I mean, I just don't have it in me. And so he left the Klan, and he gave his robe to this guy. That's how you deal with hatred.
Yeah.
That's how you deal with it. You talk with them. You engage them. You ask them why, you know, or even just relate to them as a human being. Find some kind of a commonality. Find some kind of a common ground. And whatever it is, even if you just find like one single grain of sand, build upon it. And build upon it. And eventually you will change that person's mind.
Yeah.
I honestly believe this. But if you just sit there and just like, you know, just yell, I hate you, and spit on them, that doesn't do anything. All that does is just show them how hateful you are.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to movements like that, I mean, it is specifically, you know, consider like 60s history and stuff, you know, civil rights movement and so on. Martin Luther King himself even said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. And so that's um, again coming back to the quote unquote the great work that most magicians are engaged in. These are aspects of yourself that you have to understand. Like if I hate, like I can't bring myself to hate someone. There are people in this world who I think just what they do is just disgusting and absolutely, I have no problem in completely condemning what they do. But I understand that if I hate them, like if I just want them to die or whatever it is, that doesn't do anything for me. But I have to, if I find that that hatred within me getting out of hand, I have to address it. And to this day, I can't remember a point where I hated someone so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's people who I believe should be in jail, who should definitely pay for crimes that they have committed. But I don't hate them for it.
Yeah. Yeah. In regards to, as I was saying with like the left hand path and how people, are like label themselves as black magicians and so on, I'm quite aware of a symbol known as the Baphomet, as above,
Mm-hmm.
as above, so below. It's like it represents that balance that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Yeah, the Baphomet is a very powerful symbol if you understand hermetics and alchemy, which is where that symbol, what it represents, it was drawn by Eliphas Levi.
Yeah.
Or Levy. I always get those. I'm just going to tell you right now, I pronounce everybody's last name incorrectly. I was in this study group with these people who know way more about Gardnerian witchcraft than I do. They dedicate their lives to this, and they had a study that they did every month. Yeah, every month. And I brought up Crowley, and this one lady in the group, she's like, no, it's not. It's Crowley. And I think this is, so what I started studying when I was 13, and this happened, maybe 5 years ago. So I was in my late 40s. This person's correcting me about how to pronounce someone's last name. But I mean, we need, it's good to be corrected, and I always mispronounce people's last names.
I mean,
but sorry, to get back to the Baphomet. But yeah, so I mean, the Baphomet represents, as you mentioned, as above, so below. It also represents the Kabbalah, the tree of life. It on the right hand is a Solve, and then on the left hand is a coagulum, Solve coagulum, which is the refinement of one's self, where you break it all down and then you rebuild it back up again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how, again, hermetics, alchemy, there's alchemical processes, which are the actual physical processes of changing one kingdom to another kingdom.
Yeah.
Going from maybe like mineral to vegetable to animal, etc. But there's also the hermetic way of looking at it, which is your self-development, your transformation, your transmutation, and your refinement of yourself, and that's what that Baphomet image represents. So I always find it so funny whenever I see these usually Christian conspiracy theorists talking about the Baphomet and how it's aligned with Satan and the devil, and it's just like,
Well,
I'm looking at the symbol and I go, okay, because it has a goat's head, that's what's fucking freaking him out.
yeah,
If Eliphas Levi put anything else on there, which obviously if you understand the iconography of it, he couldn't have put another image on it.
exactly.
But if he would have used some other head, they probably wouldn't have any problem with it.
Well, I mean that and the Baphomet also has tits.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, exactly. It has male and female aspects of it. But,
Yeah.
you know, we have males and females in our society. You know.
Yeah, it's supposed to represent that balance between masculinity, femininity, light and darkness. Anything that, you know, can be seen as the opposite of each other, it's supposed to represent that, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a union of opposites, and that's you know, speaking of the left hand path, you know, I don't follow a left hand path, and I don't follow a right hand path. I follow the middle path. That's, that's always been kind of. I used to joke, you know, because they would talk about black magic and white magic, and I would say it's gray magic. It's kind of like between the two.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, witches, shamans, druids, that's who we are. We're walkers between worlds. You know, we have one foot in this world and we have one foot in the other world, whatever that may be, if it's in your imagination, if it's fantasy or whatever. But you know, we walk that line, and it's important to understand that, yeah, you can kind of float off into a fantasy world and get all airy-fairy, but you also got to come back to Earth and understand things and look at things to find the truth of them and to be grounded. So you need that balance of everything, you know, balance elements, balance of opposites. Now at this point, I think I'm just rambling.
Yeah. You're right. We definitely do need balance. That is another thing. Like, I remember it was last year, I think. You know, again, specifically because, you know, I had a group of friends who, you know, were complete assholes to me because of my own beliefs. I did leave those people behind, and, you know, I've since forgiven them for what they've done to me. I haven't talked to them since, but, you know, that's just life. And eventually, just because, like, you know, probably out of spite, because, you know, you got that young mindset of, well, these people hate me, I must become the enemy of them. So I started to pick up on, you know, calling myself a left-handed magician. Well, that and the fact that I am actually left-handed. And so I started picking up on that, and then, you know, eventually I just said, you know what, this really doesn't matter. All magic is just, you know, magic. It shouldn't be a divide between left or right, black and white. It should just be, you know, magic is magic at the end of the day. Witchcraft is witchcraft at the end of the day. So, yeah, I follow the middle path as well.
Yeah, I mean, studying the quote-unquote left hand, the sinister aspects, the darker aspects, the
satanic.
The
satanic, so to speak.
Yeah. In a sense, satanic. Yeah, but I usually don't use that term because it puts it on par with then the opposite of Satan would be God. So
yeah.
Falls into that very Western Zoroastrian principle of the creator God against the destructive God. But yeah, I mean, understanding those aspects within ourselves is what you want to do. You don't want to see the left-hand path or the sinister or the Satan outside of yourself. At least, again, this is my opinion. You want to see it within yourself. Fear is something that we all struggle with at some point, you know, in our lives. And this idea that somehow you're going to overcome fear, somehow break away from fear. That doesn't happen. You don't. You never overcome fear. What you do is you face fear and you go through it.
Exactly.
That's the only way to overcome fear, is to just step into it and see what happens. That's what you have to do. The same thing with, let's say, if you're angry with someone, or you're jealous of someone, or envious of someone, or you have an aspect of yourself that you want to eliminate, like maybe you're too lazy, or you're, like me, I just procrastinate. If there's aspects of yourself which are negative, the very first thing you have to do is you have to see them, you have to recognize them, you have to own them. If you don't own those quote unquote left-hand aspects of yourself, or those negative aspects of yourself, then how in the world are you going to deal with them and understand them and overcome them? And this is something that especially in the coven I was in, the coven Scathach, that is what we did. We looked at the quote unquote shadow side of ourselves, and that's who Scathach was. She was the shadowy one. She was the one who eventually trained to Satanta, who would later become Cuchulainn, who was a hero from Irish mythology, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with.
Yeah, because I live in Ulster.
Right, exactly, yeah. So you know exactly about the curse that was placed upon the Ulster men, and Ulster, of course, is Northern Ireland now.
Yeah. Well,
Macha and Cuchulainn, yeah. But when he went to that castle to get training from the shadowy one, from Scathach, the whole story of him is going to and overcoming the various obstacles, and he was with two other people, and they fell into fear, and they ran away, and he pursued on, and he went through, there's this field where the ground was trying to hold him there and solidify him there and keep him from moving, and he overcame that. Then he got to the bridge, and he had to jump over the bridge, and he had to overcome all these various obstacles. And when he finally meets his goal, that's the end. That's essentially the end of it. And then he doesn't train under her, but he fights with her, and
faces her.
That's, yeah, and that story is kind of symbolic of the journey within yourself. Is you have to overcome these negative aspects, or not overcome them, but you have to face them. Once you face them, you've in a sense overcome them. You're still going to feel fearful. You're still going to feel envious or jealous or lazy or procrastinate. You're still going to have those, but you're going to recognize them for what it is and push yourself to overcome them. You're mastering that aspect of yourself, and that's what you want to do. You don't want to cultivate anger. You don't want to cultivate fear. At least I don't believe most people do.
Yeah.
Anger is a powerful emotion. Anger is what is driving our media.
Yeah.
So anger is definitely an emotion that is a driving force, and you can definitely, in ritual, you can cultivate that, and you can use that to your advantage to overcome something, to focus it. So, yeah. I don't know how I got off on that. I was just trying to talk about the left-hand path, I guess.
Yeah, in a way, it does relate to the left-hand path, because, people always say in the left-hand path, fuck fear. We don't need fear in our life. It doesn't exist. We've conquered fear. But at the same time,
Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, if somebody told me that they conquered fear, I mean, if somebody told me they completely eliminated fear, like they don't fear anything, they don't even fear death, it's like, okay, all right, well.
I think
I don't know if that's true, but it sounds good. I mean, again, it's like you kind of overcome it. It's a temporary win,
yeah,
but every little temporary win is in the end a greater win. You know, you
exactly.
just have to. Maybe your fear is, whatever it is. If you just take steps to overcome fears, it helps. My biggest fear was flying.
Oh, really?
And huh?
I said, really?
Yeah, absolutely terrified of flying. Absolutely terrified of it. And I had only like flown once when I was a little kid, and then later on, I flew with my wife to Vietnam to be with her family, and it was the hardest thing I had to do was to get on that flight. And that was a tough one, but I did it. I just went through it. I got in line, I bought the ticket, and I was just like standing there, and I was just like every moment I was just going through fear. And but that's just what you do. And then I got off the plane, I landed in Vietnam, and it was like I was proud of myself. I overcame that fear.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I returned home again, I felt fear again. It was easier. It was easier to overcome, and yeah. So I don't know. It doesn't go away. I mean, yeah. Obviously, the greatest fear is death, and once you come to that, not realization, but when you come to that understanding where you go, oh, well, this is the very root of fear. So if you can come to that point and somehow come to an acceptance of it, I think that that's maybe as close as anyone ever gets to actually overcoming fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you come to that point and you're willing to look at it and say, I don't know what happens after this, but it's okay. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to go through it.
Yeah. In a way, I think that's why a lot of people, as you said, one of the ultimate fears is the fear of death. In a way, I actually think that's why a lot of, these kinds of practices are developed, and these kinds of faiths, these kinds of beliefs where people say, I'm going to go to, Tirnanog or Valhalla or Folkvanger. That's the place I was talking about earlier. And yeah, I think people just make those up. Well, not make them up. It's real to them. We don't know what's gonna happen when we die, so we try to make these theories, as you said. And one of the things I can say is I think one of the things that happens to a lot of people when they try to conquer that fear of death is they go through something, either through like a deep state of meditation or doing a fuck ton of drugs. They go through ego death, and that terrifies them because no one wants to get rid of their ego. They want to say, this is who I am, this is my being, this is why I exist. And so when they go through that ego death, they think that they are actually dying, and they realize that's the ultimate fear that they have. It's the fear of the fear of death, the fear of not knowing what's going to happen, of ceasing to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed like a lot, I've noticed that a lot of people, some people I've talked to always talk about how, yeah, I'm not afraid of death. Death will come to me at any point. But deep inside, you can actually tell that they're lying to themselves. They are, in fact, afraid of dying. And that's why they come across as being so confident, so, brave and powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that is. I think that you're absolutely correct. I think that that is the ultimate. That is the root of it. I mean, that's when I was fearful of flying. It wasn't fearful of flying. It was fearful of dying. That's what it comes down to. It was a fear of something might happen, and airplane might go down, and I would die. That's ultimately what it was. There was something I was going to say, and now I forgot it. Oh yeah, that's what it was. So that, I mean, I think that's what, especially this witchcraft revival that has happened in the past 60 years or so, or sorry, in the 60s.
Yeah.
This mystery cult aspect. I think that's what mystery cults tried to take people through. Is to face these aspects of ourselves, which are deities, so that when, for example, I don't know exactly how it happened, but like, let's say in the Elysian mysteries in Greece, these youths, they would go through these experiences, and I'm sure that whatever experiences they went through, it was a way of introducing them to aspects of themselves that they will begin to understand later on in life, or they'll understand within the culture. And I think that is still what happens to today. Like, if you're doing a ritual for Samhain, for example, and Samhain is the equivalent of the holiday that happens between October 31st and November 1st, which is the change of summer into winter. Catholic celebration. They have All Hallows Eve.
Yeah.
But if you have a ritual for Samhain, and it doesn't have anything to do with what Samhain represents, you now have a ritual which takes up a lot of space on paper and is impotent. It does nothing.
Yeah.
If you have a ritual where you face death, or you remember your ancestors, or you have a ritual that has that aspect of what Samhain actually means in it, now you have a ritual that on paper, and as you're acting it out, it actually speaks to you on another level. This is what you want ritual to happen. And it's the same thing with your practice. If you are practicing and studying and performing rituals associated with, for example, Gardnerian Witchcraft, but they don't mean anything to you, or they don't hold any deeper understanding for you, then what is the point of doing those rituals?
Exactly.
What is the point of calling yourself Gardnerian if you don't actually go through these things and you understand these? That's why when I talk with people and they talk about, they practice witchcraft, and what they do is they cast spells on other people or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, so that's all you do with... I mean, I'm not obviously having this dialogue with them, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, so that's your whole purpose for studying witchcraft, is so that you can, cast a spell on somebody else, get them to fall in love with you, or make money, or seek revenge on someone else? That's the whole purpose of you doing it? Okay.
Yeah.
More power to you. Meanwhile, I think I'll get a deeper understanding of myself and the world and the universe, and have actual meaning to my path, my meditation, my rituals, and all these things. You get out what you put in,
Yeah.
That's how I perceive it.
Yeah. I recall, like, I have watched your content, obviously, and one of the things I remember is your Wicca 2.0 series. The one thing I remember was the shielding for empaths, and I noticed you don't use the chakra system in the sense of the way that people say, we have to use the chakras, we have to use the Hindu version. You use a Greek system. Is there like a particular name for the Greek system, or is it just the Greek system?
the Greek. It's called the Greek system because it was that was actually based on a paper which I believe I cited in the video. But it was a paper that was written by a man who had studied it, and he had compared. I don't know where he got it exactly, but I liked it because everybody was using the Hindu chakra system,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's okay. It's just that that's part of their culture, and that was the only one that I had found that came from a Western occult tradition. And so I used that tradition. As for where it originated, I haven't studied that. Maybe at some point I should look into it. So I don't know how historically accurate it is, let's put it that way. But I found it to be beneficial for me to use that system. I mean, the shielding for empaths, that's something that I do every day.
How is it?
Yeah, it's something that you like. If you're going to study occultism, you're going to study magic. It takes a lot of work. There's a lot of time involved. There's a lot that people do. It takes a lot of time. And one of the things that I've done that I've noticed with YouTube and kind of like this transitionary period that I'm going through right now is finding this balance between YouTube and my own path and my own practice. And that's kind of like what I've been struggling with lately. But it's very easy to not what am I trying to say? It's very easy to. I completely lost my train of thought. When you, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so where the Greek system comes from. Yeah, I don't know. I completely lost my train of thought with that. I think I said what I needed to say.
Yeah. You see, it's said like that's one of the one that you say is very European orientated rather than using the Hindu chakra system. There are people out there, and even I don't know if this is historically accurate or not. There are people out there who do believe that there is a Norse system of energy work similar to the chakras as well. But rather than calling them the chakras, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation because I'm not Norse. They call them hevels. They're like, spiraling circles of energy discs in the body. And they believe that, you have to meditate, get into that altered state of consciousness. To activate these hevels, you have to recite, the Elder Futhark while in that. While at least, I don't know the sourcing for that. Personally, in terms of my own energy systems, I mostly work, with a mixture of chakras and Taoist principle of chi system, because one of my friends who's a Taoist has, told me about, the chi paths and so on, and has taught me some basic moves for qigong to flow the energy. I think a lot of these practices, a lot of this, witchcraft practices or meditations, everyone always says, you gotta get this energy flowing. But I mean, when you're sitting down and meditating, the things that's on your mind as you're meditating is, you got 101 thoughts going through your head. You're saying, well, what am I gonna have for dinner? What am I gonna do with that? And you can't actually, focus, so to speak. Would you have, any advice for people, who, are trying to meditate or get into that kind of state of mind?
Trying to meditate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have some recommendations for that. Because I do have some recommendations, and I actually should do a video on this on how to meditate. Most people think, or I shouldn't say most people, the people who I've talked to who've had a problem meditating, they came at it, they approached it from the position of they had to sit down for half an hour with a blank mind. that's what they believed meditation was. You had to sit there for a long time with a completely blank mind.
Yeah.
That's impossible. I don't know who does that. There's no way to blank your mind. You have to focus your attention on something. That's why, people sit there and they say, oh, I was meditating for like a minute and all of a sudden I started thinking about work, or started thinking about a relationship, or started thinking about, the financial thing that's coming down the pike, or whatever it is. Stuff enters into their mind and then they're like, oh, fuck, I can't sit here and, I can't get into it. I can't meditate. So it is very difficult. You have to focus your attention, and that's one of the reasons why I did that shielding for empaths, to show people that what you do is you focus your attention on something. That's what you want to do. You want to take that, that static that's in your brain, and take that static and focus it into something so that you can concentrate. And all you need to do for magic is just be able to hold a thought in your mind for maybe up to a minute or two at the most. So that's what you need to do through meditation. And a very simple exercise is, if you have a clock with a second hand, just sit there in a comfortable position and just watch the clock go, at the start at the 00 mark, go all the way around until it comes back to that 00 mark, and just look at it, just do it. And next time you sit down, and so that's a 1 minute exercise.
Yeah.
So the next time you come to meditate, sit down in a very comfortable position. Make sure that, your roommates aren't going to disturb you. Phone's not going to disturb you. You're going to have that minute to yourself. Just sit there, and now what you're going to do is you're going to kind of close your eyes and maybe visualize a 30, and then goes all the way around like a hand, comes to a 29, and a 28. So you're now taking 30 seconds and you're concentrating on 30, 29, 28, all the way down to 1. That's a 30-second meditation. And you do this for a week or for however long you feel comfortable in doing it. And then do it for 2 minutes. And then try it for 5 minutes. I don't really recommend doing it for more than a half an hour. I don't see any benefit to, doing long meditations. You just need to be able to focus your attention for a short period of time, but you need all of your attention focused on it. And so that's what you need to do, is you do these visualization exercises. And you can start out with doing it for 30 seconds or a minute, if that's as long as you can do. I think that, unfortunately, with the internet and with all the information that people have today, you are inundated all the time with stimulus. You're inundated with sounds. You're inundated with visuals. You're inundated with smells. You're inundated. Your sensory organs are always bombarded by things.
Yeah.
And so what you actually want to do is to shield yourself from those and be able to focus in on something for a short period of time. It doesn't have to be a long time, but a short period of time. Multitasking ruins it. Video games ruins it. And I know people love video games and the internet, but you need to kind of, if you're struggling with meditation, just kind of dial it back down. Maybe don't do it as much. Like, sometimes what I have to do is I have to shut off the internet, sit quietly for, not very long, maybe 30 seconds or a minute, and then I can get into meditation. So that's the best way to do it, is to just start out that way and just understand that your goal is to be able to focus your attention for a certain period of time. That's really all you need to do. And this kind of leads into something else. Now that you mentioned that, Um, Drugs are something that was frowned upon back in my day, but we
Yeah.
love, I mean, th- what I mean by that is in ritual. So, yeah, you can drink, you can do drugs, whatever you want to do outside of it. But when you come into a circle, when you come into a group with other people who are involved, you have to be dead sober. If you are high or drunk, you would not be allowed into circle. And that's really just for the safety of other people.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's also for the individual involved. There's no way that you can perform ritual um, in a group setting if you are under the influence of something else,
Yeah.
unless it's specifically geared towards that. That's different. But on a day-to-day basis, if you do it on your own, and let's say you're just starting out on the path and you're just learning these things, and maybe you're beginning to practice with the Goetia or the Ars Paulina or, you know, Wicca, whatever it is that you're practicing, don't take, don't get into an altered state using drugs. Don't do
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Everything that you're experiencing in ritual, in circle, you want to be 100% have your senses on point. You want to know everything that you're experiencing in that moment is genuinely real, so that if you do experience something, that you'll know that it was genuine. It was not brought on by, being high or being drunk or whatever it is, being on mushrooms or whatever it is. It's real, and you can record it in a magical in a magical diary.
Yeah.
Later on, if you feel comfortable with a ritual, like let's say you feel comfortable performing a Gardnerian ritual and you're by yourself, yeah, then you could get then you could get drunk or get high or whatever and go into the ritual and see what happens. For myself, I've done it and I found it to be not beneficial. Uh, if I wanted to get into an altered state for, let's say, what I don't know what I would call this, but like a dream journey or um, like a journey into, you know,
A psychonautic journey, or like into the
yeah,
mind.
exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like a dream journey or a dream quest or whatever. That's something that you may do on your own, and you may take a substance that gets you into that state. That I can understand. But again, it's something that is really frowned upon because, you kind of, I mean, depending upon what it is. I know some people are getting into playing with some pretty heavy, uh, like ayahuasca is something
Yeah.
that people are getting very interested in, like having a quote unquote spiritual experience with it.
Yeah.
Right. If you do those things, understand it, maybe have somebody else there, or do it in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's what I would recommend. As for the average person, no, I don't see any benefit for it. And even shamans who used ayahuasca and used peyote and all these various drugs, there was a whole ritual that was involved, and the,
Yeah.
the lead shaman or the lead person in this ritual, they would tell the person, you're going to go into this field, and you're going to see these trees, and you're going to see this fire water, and you might encounter a bear, or so they're telling them already what might happen, so they're preparing their subconscious or their group mind or whatever it is. They're preparing them for it. So it's not like they just give them the substance and kick them into the cave and say good luck.
Yeah. Exactly.
There was a whole purpose for the ritual. They told them what they were going to experience. They helped them along. They were there in case something happened where they maybe started to hit themselves, or to hit a rock, or do something that was self-destructive because they're in an altered state of mind.
Yeah.
you know So people need to be aware of that.
Exactly. Yeah, like that leads to another thing. You mentioned like DMT, ayahuasca, and all that kind of stuff. Well, personally, I haven't taken them for like numerous amounts of reasons, some of which you have listed.
Hmm.
What I would advise to people who do want to try these and want to have a spiritual inward journey, there are retreats out there that you can go to that will get you in the right state of mind for it. But if you're doing it recreationally and you don't want to have like a whole spiritual experience, I would always suggest like microdosing first, so you know what you're getting yourself into, rather than taking like a full dose or wanting to take 10 5 tabs of LSD or something just because you want to impress friends. Because if you do stuff like that, your mind is not going to comprehend anything around you, and you're going to do stupid shit. You're going to end up hurting yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, and your experience is not genuine. It's
Yeah,
manufactured.
exactly.
And that's the other thing, is that you need to understand that whatever, like if you go into a ritual dead sober and you experience something during that ritual, you know that that is genuine. You may afterwards question like what happened, or what was the source of it, or why did that candle suddenly go out, or why did it, all these various things. I mean, I'm not saying like all these weird things happen during ritual, but if something does happen, you'll know it's genuine. You'll know it wasn't because, you were flying high on 5 hits of LSD.
Exactly.
It was a
Exactly.
genuine experience, and you can genuinely put that down in your ritual diary and say, at this point this happened, and the flame went suddenly higher, whatever.
Yeah.
And later on, you may find out what that meant. Um, it may Sometimes what we'll do is we'll focus on something that has meaning to us, but it may have been something that happened that was completely normal.
Yeah.
But for some reason, our state of mind focused in on that, and that became important to us.
Yeah.
And so that's why we remembered that particular incident.
Exactly. Like I remember when I built my first altar at my old house. I set it up on the windowsill and so on. I was trying to get matches and everything, trying to light up a candle. I was in a sober state of mind. I hadn't drank or anything because this is when I was 17, and
Hmm.
I can't buy alcohol at 17 and so on.
Mm.
So I light the candle, or like I try to light the candle, check my pockets to notice like I made sure that I put the matches and the matchbook in my pockets, and then all of a sudden while I was trying to find them, a match just appeared before me, like fell right in front of me. I was like, how did that happen? And then as I was trying to find the as I was trying to find the matchbook, it turned out that like as I was searching all over the place trying to find it, looking under things, I turn over to my iPad, which I checked earlier, and nothing was there. I look under it, and then there's the matchbook.
Mm.
And so as I said, like I live in Northern Ireland, so the assumption is these were fairies playing tricks on me.
Hmm. Yeah, and so what happened at that point, the reason why you remember that is because that's something that you focus on. There was something about that meant, probably on some kind of a subconscious level, that meant something to you, or it was something that your attention was focused on for that moment. And so that's important, and that's something that I would suggest to people. To I think ritual diaries are very, very important. um, and that's something you would want to write down in your ritual diary when it happens.
Yeah.
And the other thing about ritual diaries is, you usually have a top part where maybe you record certain things, like what time of the year this was it night, was it during the day, what was the weather like, what were things you noticed about that ritual, like the matchbook thing, you write that down. But you also have space down at the bottom that you leave blank. So like, let's say maybe during a ritual you have a period where you do a tarot reading or a divination session, and you read something or you look at something and you don't know exactly understand what that means. I'm trying to find an example for myself. I can't think of one right now, but if you have an experience, you write it down in your in your ritual diary, and maybe something happens like a month from now or a week from now or something, and it clicks with you about, oh, I remember that happened during this ritual. And you can go back in your ritual diary, and now you can say, now you can write in below there like, oh, like a week later I received a check for like, 4,000 something dollars, and so you can kind of tie it back to that ritual, or
Yeah.
maybe, you know what I mean. There's it's a way of kind of understanding how some things that are important, and then other things that are just, just coincidence.
Yeah.
There's a lot of coincidences that happen. It doesn't mean that every single coincidence has a deeper meaning. It's just a coincidence, And so it's important to understand from a magical perspective, like, what is a coincidence, what actually has some meaning, and what is it that we're giving meaning to it.
Yeah.
Because we have to be our hardest critic.
Yeah.
That's how I am. Like, some people, they think that they can just perform a ritual anywhere, and that's, yeah, I think that's important to understand. That you can sort of visualize and create like an astral temple, what people call an astral temple.
Yeah.
You familiar with that? Okay. So that's true. You can do that after you've practiced for a while, but I think that in the beginning it's very important to, when you go into a ritual, there's certain things that you do that you would only do in a ritual, like maybe change your clothes for a ritual, or there's just various things that you do going into a ritual, so that you understand that you're now leaving the world of the mundane. You're leaving this world. You're now stepping into a magical world. You're now stepping into a circle with limitless possibilities. And so it's very important to kind of make that switch, almost like turning a light switch on and off. And I think this, again, is very important. And if you, again, this is all my opinion, so people can take it for what they want, but if you don't go into a ritual understanding that, and it's just kind of like it's your everyday go-to, there's no separation between your magical world and your mundane world. It's kind of blended all into one. I don't know. I don't really see a benefit in that, because from my perspective, you're not making a distinction between going into ritual and not going into ritual.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like an athlete. Let's say an athlete in a in the Olympics. They're at the let's say it's a runner.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in line with a bunch of other runners. All these runners are peak performance, peak mental state. They've been training. This is what they do. They focus, they get in there, and they run, and they're running to win. They have to get themselves into a state of mind. They don't just show up at the Olympics in their shorts and tennis shoes ready to run. That's just not what they do.
Exactly.
They train for it. At that moment, they are psyching themselves up. They're psyching themselves up. They're focused only on winning. They don't care what the other runners are doing around them. They're focusing in on only what they are doing. And that is exactly what someone going into a magical circle needs to do. Going into the circle, nothing else matters except what they're doing at that point. Their consciousness is now switched and changed. They are now in tune with whatever it is that they want to do. And when they go out of that ritual, they're now back into the mundane world. So, in my opinion, again, I think it's very important for people to understand that they are now going into ritual and they're out of ritual, so that they know that they can turn that switch on and off.
Yeah. Actually, I do remember one of the first rituals I ever practiced, from my own path, from my own personal experiences. I was working with the rune Fehu, the rune that represents wealth. I was like, okay, I'm going into this state of ritual in the shower so I can cleanse myself and, focus only on the intent of using Fehu for, to get a job opportunity or something, because, I'm a student and I need to get money for, finances, just everyday finances. The next day after I performed that ritual, I came home from school and my mom comes and tells me that my grandfather's brother is looking for someone to work in his pharmacy, and as soon as I realized that, holy shit, did this actually work? So yeah, I do understand. Yeah. I do agree.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I mean, in the beginning, I think it can be frustrating because maybe you do a ritual and you want something to happen and it doesn't happen. You get very frustrated and, you can kind of give up on it. And I hear this all the time from people. Like I had a roommate once. I moved in and we were talking and they were like, yeah, I studied witchcraft for a while and I did a couple of rituals and it didn't work out for me, and so I left it. And I was, in the back of my mind, I was like smiling. It's like, yeah, it's not going to work for you then. Like if that's what you want, if you just think you can pick up a book, flip through a couple of pages, do a ritual, and suddenly something is going to manifest in your life, I don't think it's impossible, but I don't think it's very likely something's going to happen.
It's like a gamble.
You have to spend some time. You have it. Magic, actually, there's a lot of work involved.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that people don't want to do, but you have to do a lot of inner work. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you have to work on yourself before you can work on other things.
Yeah, exactly. You need to work on yourself just to be able to focus and to concentrate and to, your intention, being able to focus that and understand what it is that you want and how to accomplish your goals. So yeah, it is. It's very important to do those things and to study. And yeah, some people it doesn't work for them and they give up on it, and that's fine. That's fine. It's not for them.
Yeah.
Like I study, but it's not. I don't want money out of this. I don't want these things. I want to find out who I am.
Yeah.
I want to grow as a person, and I also kind of want to understand what the hell's going on in the world. I want to sort of peel the curtain away and stare at the face of God, as a particular writer once said.
Yeah.
I want to see the universe for what it is, and I feel that studying magic and the occult is a way to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the only way, but I think it is a way to accomplish that.
Yeah, that's very similar to what I do study occult stuff. I haven't gotten into studying grimoires and so on. I study elements of it. Like I learn the systems of it. Like I've learned about Kabbalah. I've learned about Crowley's system of Thelema, which comes from Hermetics, and everything like that. I have learned from those. Like I've studied them, and I was like, huh, yeah, maybe this can help me better understand the universe and understand reality, because I heavily identify. I mean, like the whole point of this show is to talk about things like this. I study philosophy. in school, I am a theology student. I'm going to university next year to continue that study. Not just from like the Christian sense, like it's a philosophy degree, but with elements of theology incorporated into it. I like to learn and study and teach people about these kinds of things so that people can have a better understanding of these practices. Witchcraft and Wicca and all other elements of the occult are usually heavily looked down upon in the Western world for the sake of people not understanding it. But if we take like the moment to actually understand those that practice it and understand the systems of it, it's not as scary as people make it out to be.
Yeah, I kind of I struggle with two possible outcomes of the revival of occultism, especially with the internet, because so much is available to us now. Like when I was studying, I had to go to I had to do interlibrary loans to get books, to read, and then I hand copy them.
Yeah.
Back in my day. Now you go on the internet and go to a website and download the PDF. It's like, fuck, I wish I had this when I was in my early days. But so there's two things that I feel about the greater exposure of occultism to the world. There's two aspects of it. One is, like you had mentioned, I feel like the occult in general has been in the back seat for a very long time, and it has not been recognized for understanding the contribution that it has made to science, what it has contributed to astronomy, to chemistry, to the pharmaceutical industry, to philosophy. All of these things stem from what we understand as the occult, because these people back in the day who were playing with various alchemical processes and transmutation, creating new metals, metallurgy, and making tinctures with plants to cure toothaches and all these various things, all of this stemmed from occult knowledge. And we owe so much to that from where we are today, the knowledge that we've gained. And I really feel like people look back, those superstitious people back then who believed such and such. They don't understand the contribution that it has made to our society. They don't understand, let's say, the most even like philosophical ways of, what am I trying to say? For example, actually, you know what? I'm gonna shy away from that, because I don't know. I don't want to give bad information. I don't want to say something that may turn out to be incorrect on your channel. So I think I'll just kind of end that thought there. But so I struggle between that and also the other elements of the occult needs to stay sort of in the back. It needs to stay there because it's not for everybody.
Yeah, there are going to be people who go into it with like a mindset of, yeah, this is going to be so great for me. And then as soon as they enter into it and they start practicing these things, they come out of it so afraid of the world, so, filled with paranoia and panic, because they don't understand themselves first before they go into it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's exactly. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly what it is. They, like, for example, maybe somebody will pick up a book by Crowley and they'll read through it, and they immediately assume that if they perform this ritual and do this, that they'll be able to, cast some spell on the girl across the street who they're madly in love with, and do some kind of spell to and to entrance her and to, to get her to date them.
Yeah.
So that might be their goal, and so that's all they want out of it. They just want some kind of personal gain out of it. And in a sense, that's okay. But if you stick with it, you might actually find out who you are and why you do certain things, and it may improve your life.
Yeah.
But if all you want out of studying the occult is to sleep with some hot girl who lives across the street, then okay, more power to you. But personally, for myself, I'd much rather dive deep into better understanding of who I am.
Yeah.
The famous line over the Oracle of Delphi is "Know thyself."
Yeah.
That's a pretty big mountain.
Yeah.
That's a bigger mountain than most people understand. It's not, you don't just know yourself. You don't spend 10 minutes knowing yourself and then go on with life.
Yeah.
You're probably going to spend your entire waking days finding out who you are.
Yeah. You don't do like a 10-15 minute meditation and then you just go and end up just saying, wow, I know the cosmos and I know everything now. I understand the universe.
Exactly. The Cliff Notes version of who I am, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I also like I frequent an occult forum quite often, and all the times one of the most common answers, and even the regulars on it, and even the moderators on the forum are like, for fuck's sake, why do we keep getting these people? The most common question that's always asked is, how do I perform this love spell? How do I get my ex back using magic? Those are the two common questions that come on. They don't ask the questions of, how can I understand myself using these systems of magic? It's always, right. What can I gain from it? Like what can I gain in the material world from this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, people like that, I direct them towards it. Here, is this what you want to do? Go for it. Like, I've talked with people online, they're like, oh, I want to curse somebody and do this. I'm like, do it. They're like, well, wait a second, don't you believe in the threefold law and you shouldn't harm people and all this stuff? And yeah, you shouldn't, but me telling you isn't going to do any. You're going to have to find that out for yourself.
Exactly.
You can tell somebody till you're blue in the face not to do something, but they're going to do it anyway. And once they do it, they find out the consequences of it, then they've learned something for themselves,
Yeah. There's always people who I also see that try to dwell into Goetia summoning, thinking, haha, I'm going to prove to my friends that I can summon demons, that I have power over demons. And then they fuck themselves over because they don't understand the system of summoning is, in a sense, sacred. It's not a cheap one-party parlor trick that you do to impress your friends. It's something that you have to devote your time and energy into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually that brings up something that I think maybe we should mention, or I should mention, and especially something like the Goetia, you don't want to just start out with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you should build yourself up first to understand, like, what is the point of creating a circle?
Yeah.
What is the point of invoking the elements, or invoking the watchtowers, or invoking the four, whatever it is,
yeah.
However you cast your circle, whatever system that you're using, you need to be familiar with those things, but most importantly, you also need to understand the history behind those spirits in the Goetia.
Yeah.
Where did they stem from?
Yeah.
and they stem back from deities in Sumeria.
Yeah, exactly.
And so people need to understand that when you're going through this process and you're opening up that brass vessel and you are bringing forth that energy or that spirit or whatever it is you want to call it that is represented by that sigil, um, there's a lot of stuff involved in that. It's not just you're going into a ritual and you're looking at this sigil and you're focusing on this particular spirit. There's a lot of stuff that's involved in that, and you don't want to just do it without having the prior experience. Basically, what I'm saying is I don't think it's a good way to start.
Yeah.
I think it's something you might want to give yourself a little time to build up for it, just because you're going to have a better understanding of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and one of the things that, because of the way that my channel is, I talk about, I debunk a lot of the bullshit Christian stuff that comes up around, people practicing witchcraft and Satanism and all this stuff, all the nonsense that comes out about that. But there is a sense of respect and a sense of awareness that one does need when going into a ritual where, let's say, they are going to focus in on a certain spirit or a certain demon or whatever it is you want to call it. And if you don't, yeah, you can scare yourself. You can cause a subconscious trigger in your mind where you start maybe getting fearful, or I can imagine there may be aspects that someone is not quite prepared for them opening up in their conscious or their subconscious mind.
Yeah.
That's what I would say is kind of is important to put those things off, to kind of understand that it's a stepping stone, and you kind of have to understand each step before you get to that step.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah.
So, like, just to finish off, because you gotta find an ending point somewhere, of course, in a podcast.
Yeah,
what would you tell those who have just began their path, or just they're curious and they're starting to learn about witchcraft, starting to learn about Gardnerian witchcraft, or about Wicca, or these various other different New Age beliefs as they're known?
Mm-hmm. Go directly to the source, especially when it comes to Gardnerian material. Read Gardner's books. That's one of the best way. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to abandon something and pick something else up. Read and do a lot of soul searching. Find out what it is that you want. Find out what it is that resonates with you. I think that's step zero. Whatever, if you feel a connection with nature, spend some time in nature, looking up at the sky and pondering things. If you feel connected with the ocean, or maybe you feel connected just sitting at home, or whatever it is, whatever connection you feel to everything around you, nurture that and look at what it is that you want out of life and your beliefs, and how what do you think about things? What do you think happens after you die? What do you think happens in whatever it is, just kind of explore it. I think that's the most important thing. And then maybe you'll read a book that resonates with you, and maybe this person who wrote that book was a Gardnerian witch, or maybe they were a Buddhist, or maybe they were
Yeah.
a Christian, you know, whoever it is. Like if you, like for example, if you are studying Gardnerian witchcraft, and you read the books, and you were kind of exploring with it, it didn't really work out with you, and you join a coven and you get initiated, and later on you find out it's not for you, and you find out, what, actually I kind of believe in Christianity or Catholicism, then abandon it and study that. Don't be afraid of it. No one's gonna talk bad about you. Nobody's gonna call you up going, hey, why weren't you in circle last night? That's not gonna happen. Nobody's gonna, they're going to treat you exactly how they treated you before. They're going to treat you with respect, and you found out it wasn't for you. There's nothing wrong with that, So that's my advice. As for, like, let's say somebody does feel that they found Gardnerian witchcraft and it works for them, and now they really want to find another group. Let's see. Normally, I would recommend Witchbox, but again, that's been going down. I would say maybe look for Facebook groups that are Gardnerian. So, like, do a search for Gardnerian under Facebook. Maybe do a search under Google. Find somebody who maybe is a pagan or a witch. Talk to them. If there's a local occult bookstore in your area, go to that bookstore and start hanging out there and chatting with the people who work there. And you kind of have to just put your feelers out there. And I mean, I actually wanted to get into a Gardnerian coven for a very long time, for years and years and years. And it wasn't until one day that I saw a post on Witchvox, and I responded to the post that the person was putting up about starting up a Wicca 101 class in Oakland, in the Bay Area here where I live, and I went to it, and I enjoyed it, and it there was already a connection there, but what I needed was a connection with a group. So don't be frustrated or give up just because you're not finding a group. Sometimes it's just it'll work out for the best for you. Like I've hooked up with, or not hooked up, but I have hooked up with people, but I have met people who were Gardnerians who I didn't get along with. It just didn't resonate with me. They didn't resonate with me, and I couldn't imagine circling with that group just because maybe, like, let's say you're in, for example, I'm going to use you, just because maybe you're in a small town in Northern Ireland where there's no other Gardnerian witches except for this one person, and you meet them and you find out that you and that other person don't really get along, then that's you don't want to get into a group where you're not going to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is I had mentioned a year and a day. People kind of get confused about maybe what a year and a day is. Obviously, it comes from mythology, but it's the concept of giving yourself time to get to know what it means, what Gardnerian witchcraft is, getting to know who the high priest and the high priestess is, who the other coven mates are, who maybe initially you might not meet. You might not meet them for a while. You may only meet the high priestess and or the high priest, or both, initially. And they may put off, like, let's say, maybe doing an initiation for a year and a day, or maybe even longer, or maybe shorter. But it gives you that time period to find out, first of all, if Gardnerian witchcraft is for you, and secondly, if this particular group is going to be a good fit for not only you, but also for them. So that's what that my interpretation of that year and a day is. It's giving you that opportunity to understand that it's a feeling out period. It's a getting to know each other time, and after that period of time, then you'll find that then maybe you'll meet with the high priest and the high priestess and or the coven and find out that it's not going to work out, or you may find out it does work.
Yeah.
So,
Now, where can people like find information like on about you, like apart from your YouTube channel? Is there a way people can contact you if they wish to talk firsthand to someone who's a Gardnerian witch like we are talking right now?
yeah, I mean, I have my YouTube channel, Hellbound Heathen, and you can find me on YouTube. Just type in Hellbound Heathen, and my channel should come up. I'm on Twitter as Loken ACS, so that's LAILOKEN, capital A, capital C, capital S. You can also visit my website, which you had mentioned earlier. It's covenskethach.org. YouTube is probably the platform where I have the most reach. So you can leave a comment in one of my comment sections saying, "Hey, I'd like to chat with you," or whatever. I try to read all my comments. But on my YouTube channel, if you go to the About section, there's my email address in there, and you can email me and ask me questions. So that's probably the best way, is to go to my YouTube channel, go to the About section, and get my email and send me an email.
All right. Thank you so much for actually coming on to my show. You're the first person that's actually came onto the show that I've contacted to interview. So thank you very much for your time, and
It was, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed. How do you like to be addressed on your channel?
Oh, you can call me Light Wolf, or you can call me by my actual name that I contacted you through my email with. Most people just call me Zach.
Okay, Zach. So I mean, yeah, no, I really enjoyed talking with you, Zach. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you reaching out, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you too. You're welcome to always come back if you ever want to.
Yeah, definitely. If you ever want to chat some more, or maybe, I mean, we were all over the place today, but if you want to focus in on a particular area, or maybe a particular what we would call a Sabbath that's coming up, we could always do that too.
Yeah. A Sabbath, as in those are the holidays that are celebrated in Wicca, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which one's actually coming up? I forgot, because I know one just recently passed. Was that Imbolc?
That was Beltane.
Oh, Beltane.
That we just passed on May 1st, yeah. And now we're heading towards the summer solstice, which is just giving you a brief little history of Gardnerian witchcraft. Originally, it was just the 4 celebrations, which Gardner probably was influenced, or probably helped to kind of flesh him out a little bit, with Ross Nichols, who was part of the Order of Bards, Oviates, and Druids over in England. But originally, we just had the 4. We had November 1st, February 1st, February 2nd, May 1st, and August 1st, which was Beltane for May 1st, Lunasa for August 1st, Samhain for November 1st, and then Imbolc or Umbelc for February 2nd. And then later on, they actually included the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a name, and so people just kind of gave them names, like Aidan Kelly, who I actually interviewed him on my channel, suggested the name of Mabon, and Litha. So yeah.
All right.
Kind
Yeah.
of a thing on that.
Yeah, I think if I'm remembering, the winter solstice, they borrowed the name from traditional Norse practice, Yuletide.
Jewel. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You could either call it Yuletide or in the mainland Europe area, Saturnalia is another one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for being an interviewee on my podcast.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a lot of fun, Zach. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, tune in next time.
Mm-hmm.
See ya.
All right. Take care.
You too. Blessed be.
Blessed be.